people who came over from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine Gala. And I want to give a shout out to Lisa Carlin for making that happen. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, and it's important because we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need everybody to be involved in this. And I hope people from the meat and dairy industry are here. I really do, and I say that in all seriousness. Okay, guys, as you take your seats, okay? And we really ask you to just, I love these hugs, these deep and profound hugs, but we're just gonna ask everybody to take their seats. Yeah, she's cute, I get it. Sit down. All right. How many of you would like to see a vegan world by 2026? I'm going to ask you one more time. How many of you want to see a vegan world by 2026? Hell yeah! Are we going to do it? If anybody's going to do it, is it going to be the people in this room? It is up to us. There is no more important place to be in the entire world right now than in this room. We are literally the only people standing between other people, animals, nature, and an ecological apocalypse. And that is no exaggeration. We like to talk, do we have 10 years? Do we have 15 years? Guess what? The BBC just reported we might have only 18 months to change our ways before we are looking at doomsday. This is no joke. But the good news is we have a solution. And the person who is bringing that solution, who came here to give it to you tonight, is right there. Please stand up. Dr. Sailesh Rao. Woo! Woo! And like a lot of you, there have been times where I've gotten very down. And I go, oh my God, we're going into a house shaking people and saying, wake up, your house is on fire. And they're saying, why are you being so strident? Like, hello, your house is on fire. We're trying to help you. So when I heard what Dr. Sailesh Rao had to say, I felt hope. Because he's got a plan, and you're going to hear it tonight. And guess what? Every single one of you is going to be part of that plan. Are you ready to do it? If we could achieve a vegan world by 2026, if you jump on board? The good news is you don't have to stop doing what you're doing. I totally agree with what was said here on this podium earlier. Diversity is great. Do your own thing. However, the plan that Dr. Sailesh Rao has, everything fits into it. It's all inclusive. You can stay with your organizations. You can continue doing what you're doing. It fits in everything. This is the guy who helped create the internet. He is using the exact same methodology that they used to create the internet to create a vegan world by 2026. So, are we ready? Are we going to do whatever it takes? All right, one more time. Are we going to do whatever it takes? Because really, what's the alternative? You know, we like to think of extinction as something that can only happen really to dinosaurs and, rare species. Human beings could go extinct. Okay? It's a very real possibility. And I know some of you have said, well, you know, if that happens, well, it's okay. But no, we don't want that to happen. We want to evolve our planet. And the great news is that our solution, living without killing, is the very thing that is going to save us from environmental apocalypse. It's that simple. What we have is the gift that will save the world. okay? All of us. So, you know, I've had this shift. I'm not scolding anymore because I realize I'm giving people a gift. Like, thank you. That's what they should be saying. And I include the meat and dairy industry representatives who are scattered throughout. I talked to somebody from Tyson earlier, you know, and good for them that they brought a disruptor here to go back and say this is what we need to do. Because guess what? It doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you're making if everybody's dead from the heat. It doesn't matter what your next quarter is going to be because there is no next quarter. Okay, so this is an existential crisis that goes beyond any notions of we've got to just make more money for the next quarter. I mean, really, we all have to change, and the companies have to change. So what I would like to say is, to paraphrase Charles Dickens, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. We all know about the worst of times. They're still killing hundreds of billions of animals, and it's a bloodbath. But the good news is Beyond Meat, the most successful initial public offering in years and years and years and years. And it has totally changed the landscape because now the smart money is going into alternative meats. Okay? And we know that dairies are in crisis, and the smart money is going to the dairy alternatives. And you know, Jane Unchained, and we're live right now. We go live all the time, every day. We've gone live at Carl's Jr., at their Beyond Burger, at Del Taco, at their Beyond Taco, at Costco, introducing Just Eggs, the Al Pastor vegan salad, and the acai bowl. I mean, the list goes on and on. White Castle, Impossible sliders, and just wait till Impossible slides into the IPO market. Oh yeah, things are changing. We've got the momentum. Okay, so I urge all of you, okay, listen carefully tonight. We have one incredible speaker, and then we are going to show Countdown to Year Zero. Are you ready for it? Another amazing thought leader is Mia MacDonald, okay? And her resume is so long, we'd be here till 4 in the morning. But I want to say her group, Brighter Green, she has worked with huge NGOs, non-governmental institutes, and written policy papers, and she has so much to tell us. And then after she speaks, we're going to introduce Dr. Sailesh Rao, and then we're going to see Countdown to Year Zero. And then we're going to take your questions, so get some questions ready. All right, thank you. Mia, let's hear it for Mia.
Thank you, Jane. That was a wonderful introduction. So I'm really pleased that you all are here tonight. I'm sorry, I'm unfurling some of my stuff. And I know it's the first night of the conference. I know people are excited, maybe a little bit tired, but I'm glad you're here. And I've been coming to this conference also for many years, probably not every year, as Dawn Moncrief said she had been here, but for many, many years, and I'm really pleased to see all of you here. So what I'd like to do relatively briefly tonight is talk about the work that Brighter Green and I have done to bring animals' interests, animal rights, animal welfare to global policymaking on environmental issues. And as Jane said, we are in the midst of a climate crisis, we're in the midst of a biodiversity crisis, and as we know, or many of you will know, a lot of those problems are driven by human exploitation of animals, right? So we have tens of billions of land animals raised and slaughtered every year for food. We have many millions of animals in other forms of human captivity. We have probably trillions of marine animals who are killed every year for food or even for feed. So the context for this work is urgency. And one of the recent United Nations reports on climate change basically said we had 12 years to really stop the most cataclysmic climate crisis that we could experience. And that report came out last year. So basically we have 11 years now. So I'm going to tell you a bit about the work we've done, how we've done it, why we've done it briefly, and then also offer a few thoughts on what I think is succeeding, where I think there are some bottlenecks, and then leave you with some ideas for future action. So I'll try to do that as a nice prelude, I hope, to the film, which I'm also looking forward to seeing. Okay, so I have to click. Sorry, okay. So I just want to say a few words about Brighter Green. So Brighter Green was started as a public policy action tank. So we say action because we're thinking, we're researching, but we're also doing. We're experimenting with policy ideas, with having policy ideas become programs. And it was explicitly started about 11 years ago to bring animals to serious attention in policies on environmental issues, climate issues, sustainability issues, broadly conceived. Our work is very much global, and especially global south, which is a broad and somewhat inexact term, but includes basically all the regions outside of the industrialized world. So Asia, Pacific, Africa, and Latin America. We seek to work very collaboratively with colleagues and organizations and individuals in those countries, and we seek to put a focus on equity and rights. And again, we see that as going across species as well. We are based in New York also, I should say. So we have 4 programs. The first one is, I can't exactly see the slide. The Asia program, which is the focus is on China. What we've been doing for the last number of years is working with individuals and movements in China to really help create a concept of good food that is sustainable, that is ethical, that challenges factory farming, that promotes the interests and welfare of farmed animals, and is in a more vegan direction. We also work a lot of research and documentation and then networking around globalization of factory farming. So again, looking at Global South, where there's a lot of expansion and a lot of industries from the US, Europe, Australia, New Zealand are really promoting factory farming as basically essential, inevitable. You know, people want to eat more meat and dairy, this is how you have to do it. And of course, not at all explaining the multiple exploitations of that system for animals, of course, but also for the environment, for forests, for biodiversity, for water resources as well. We do international climate advocacy, and actually I'm going to talk a fair amount about that work where we are really trying to bring animal agriculture as a key climate issue because the science shows that it is, and yet the policy is still pretty underdeveloped around animal agriculture and climate change. And the final project is called the Vegan America Project. It's run by Martin Rowe, who I think is here in the room, but he's here at the conference. And we just actually did a policy paper on plant-based meat and dairy and cellular meat alternatives. So the science around that, but also some of the policy issues arising. And I'd encourage you to take a look at that. It's out in the exhibit hall. Okay, so a little bit about Brighter Green's approach. So we are really focused on policy. So that's public policy, that's government, that's regulation. Can also mean institutional policy, especially institutions that have a role with government, but it's really saying, you know, we need laws, we need regulations, we need tax policy, we need to focus on the big changes, and those big changes really come through economic structures, incentives. So that's really our focus is public policy. We do research, we do policy analysis. We also really seek to bring what we think of as innovative policy recommendations, things that probably haven't been suggested before to policymakers. And again, a lot of this is on our website, and I'm happy to talk more about it. We really do ask hard questions. We try to be provocative as well as polite, but questions like, why isn't animal agriculture on a climate agenda? Why is there a website about biodiversity loss that really doesn't have anything about animals, not just as utilities for human beings? We look to identify points of convergence. So again, we're seeking to work and link people, scientists, activists, advocates across environmental, animal welfare, climate change, public health, livelihoods, and again, around animal agriculture and the growth of it, both the production and consumption side. We've developed quite a few partnerships. And I'll say something about those in a minute. We do acknowledge varied entry points, so there are many more climate vegans now, and I hope you know some of them, but we basically, it's great that that connection is being made because back in the day, there were very, very few. But we do, we will take varied entry points. In China, food security is a huge concern, but animal agriculture and exploitation of animals in the environment undermines food security as well. So we really seek to be quite broad in our conception, but also quite clear on our values and principles. We do really like to work in partnership and collaboration with organizations, networks around the world. We've helped create a few of those. One is called the Food and Climate Alliance, which didn't exist before, to really look at food systems broadly, but definitely animal agriculture at the center of that, and meat and dairy consumption and production. We work with something called the Global Forest Coalition that does a lot of work with indigenous communities, frontline communities who are experiencing the effects of massive soy production in Latin America, the toxics related to that, the public health challenges. So we really find, coalitions can be somewhat challenging and time-consuming, but really important, both to get work done and also thinking about equity. How can we really share resources, share ideas, and work in solidarity? And again, we know that we have different access to resources around the world, and I want to acknowledge, being someone from the global north, I have a lot more of that than many of my colleagues in global south. And I just thought, since it was Thursday night, I would do a kind of a throwback picture. So this is way back in the 20th century, those of you very young people. So I'm there on the left. And I wanted to put this in because I think for many of us in this room and outside of this room, as young kids, we have a real connection to animals, right? We didn't have to read a book about it. We didn't know theory, but we feel that we're interested in them. We care about their well-being. And then there are ways that society tries to make us feel like that's sentimental. You kind of need to grow out of it. So as a kid, I had a very, very strong connection to animals, a strong interest in animals. Unfortunately, I'm wildly allergic to almost every animal, and unfortunately maybe not human beings, or some of them I am. But so I actually can't do hands-on work with animals, but I really wanted to find a way in my adult life to work on animal issues. And I also had a very strong connection, as many of us do, I think, to the environment, to trees, to the environment around me. So I wanted to find a way to combine that. And, in my 20s, I had the opportunity to go and get a graduate degree in public policy and do quite a lot of international work. And I wanted to bring that into this space where animals and environment meet. So on the right is that UN climate conference in 2009, which was held in Copenhagen. And some of you will probably remember that was a very important climate conference for many reasons, and it kind of collapsed into not a lot ultimately came out of it. But I got to sit on a panel with one of my mentors, Wangari Maathai, who was the first African woman and first environmentalist to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and some other colleagues from Kenya. And I talked about animal agriculture in that setting. And that was one of the first really formal presentations on that issue, which might be surprising to you. It was surprising to me then. And I will say in that room, probably not quite as many people as are here, there was receptivity, but also puzzlement. And often the response, even in a climate policy environment, is, what do you want me to do? Be a vegetarian, be a vegan? And of course the answer is yes, and we need policy attention to these issues. So, okay, and then I just want to segue to a little bit of this work in the climate change, the main UN policy-making body. And you will know, I'm sure, the Paris Agreement that was decided by all of the world's countries in 2015. And despite what someone in the White House might be saying, the US has not formally withdrawn from that treaty. It takes more time, there's more logistics around it. So we are still in that. And what we've tried to do in climate conferences, and I will say Paris was kind of a sea change where there was more recognition. There was more understanding of, yes, animal agriculture is driving climate change. Obviously, animal agriculture and animals are hugely affected by climate change, and we need to be more open to listening to it. So this slide just shows different examples of what we did. Side event with various partners. You'll see think tanks, Humane Society International, something called EAT that's really focused on food systems. One of my colleagues who is from China did basically live blogging of the conference for people in China. We did writing, we reached out to media. We also did some formal policy submissions, which sounds rather technical, and in a way it is is, but it's an entry point into the process where you're basically giving research guidance to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And what's interesting about that is even if there isn't always action, and the action is still pretty limited, but you get into the policy stream. So when they do a summary report on what inputs did we have from civil society, from scientists, from governments, our work and a few other organizations there, saying animal agriculture is a key driver of climate change, meat and dairy production and consumption absolutely have to be reduced, and here are all the reasons why, and here are all the benefits of that. And then, okay, thank you. And again, a lot of this is on our website, and if you want to become a climate geek kind of like me, definitely come and talk to me, and we'll talk more about it. And this is just two examples from the most recent climate change conference, which was held in Poland in a city called Katowice. So on the left, for you, is another of these formal submissions. And so again, it's a process that's open to governments as well as civil society. And so we really try to take advantage of that, again, to try to get these issues on the agenda so they can't be ignored, they can't be marginalized. And on the right, we partnered with a group of organizations, so some environmental, as you see, Center for Biological Diversity, Farm Forward, and Brighter Green, with a number of other organizations whose logos for various reasons didn't make it onto the flyer. But to use the example of what kind of food is being served at the climate conference and what are the climate impacts of that food. And again, you all might be extremely surprised that despite various efforts to green, you've seen that, green conferences, green venues, food is almost entirely an afterthought. So one of the points of the menu was quite meat and dairy heavy, and that one of the dishes, I think it had a red meat and then a bacon, basically was almost like 10 times the greenhouse gas emissions of one of the plant-based items on the menu. So what was interesting about this, even though policy, as I said, is hugely important, this kind of work also opens space. And this climate cost of food at COP24 got quite a lot of media attention and actually got a formal response from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, because we also sent a letter saying, what is this? We need to be walking the walk. And they sent a formal letter, and it was not entirely mealy-mouthed, but it was, again, it was opening the discourse. They said a few things about culture and Poland, and we, said Poland has vegetables, and So we are making progress. And now, so I just want to move to a few slides just to kind of sum up. So kind of where are we with this work of really bringing animals as animals to environmental policy making? We are making progress, but I'm sure some of you will know, there is still resistance from environmentalists, right? It's changing, it's getting less, but there still is some sense of, these are urban issues, or, our funders, they don't want to go to a vegan meal. So that is still there. There are still environmental organizations who will say, okay, you care about climate, then drop red meat, but eat more chicken, eat more fish, eat more pork. And so there are also climate calculations around that, right? Because all those animals need to be fed, and the feeding of them leads to huge loss of forests and vegetation, as well as a cruelty. So I think it's also important that, yes, greenhouse gas emissions are crucial, but we also have to broaden the frame. What about the effect on natural resources? What about the effect on the animals themselves? I mentioned before, the environmental meetings still often serve animals, despite going paperless. And many of the UN conferences, you can't bring paper, they really frown on plastic. Food, there's almost no guidance. So we and other organizations are really trying to change that. And next year, so I have CBD on the slide, and these become a lot of acronyms, UN acronyms. It's the Convention on Biological Diversity meeting. It meets every 2 years. And again, all the countries of the world are signatories to that. It's going to be in China next year. So my colleagues in China and I and a few others are already working to say the food there cannot be exploiting biodiversity and has to be very plant-based, if not vegan. So wish us luck, and if you have interest in that, let us know. And these conferences have thousands of people, so both the demonstration, the modeling could be important, but also the actual impact on animals and the environment. It won't be a surprise to you in the room to know corporate power is still really strong, right? So it's the meat industry, it's the dairy industry, it's the forest destruction industry, it's the feed industry, it's many, many, many. And I think we have to be really aware of that, and I think there's a lot of room for more work to hold corporations accountable for their exploitation of animals and the environment. Policy, as much as I'm a policy wonk, I have to be honest with you, policy is mostly lagging. I can't even say there's one country in the world that really is working on a sustainable, equitable food system at a national level. We see governance is in crisis in many parts of the world, including right here. On the other hand, there's an urgency. The scientific case is growing, the awareness is growing. So I think it's much harder to ignore now than it was 10 years ago. Not that the world and our leaders should have been ignoring climate change, should have been ignoring biodiversity loss, should have been ignoring massive animal exploitation, but the scientific case is being made repeatedly. And there are two quite seminal UN reports, one that was about how do we keep the Earth's temperature warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we're not that far away from that now. That was the one that said, look, we have 12 years left to really change the way we live on this planet. And then most recently, another report came out, it's called IPBES, which was on global biodiversity. And basically it was a clarion call for massive extinctions are underway. Hundreds of millions of species are threatened, if you include insects, and human beings are threatened in that too. So I actually feel a glass half full is the scientific case is really, the scientific evidence is really growing, and I think that's important. And I think, bringing science and ethics together is also really important. Okay, so what are some positive things, some vectors for change? So one thing I would say, and there are many young people in the room, which is great, I just think generationally, the boundaries between caring about the environment, caring about animals, they're breaking down. There are fewer binaries, right? Gender, north, south. I think younger generations much more aware of power, much more aware of inequalities in power, much more aware of the urgency of system change. So I find that actually really encouraging, this breaking down of boundaries, even human, non-human, right? I think there's just much more awareness, much more acceptance of that in many places, including among younger scientists and academics. More awareness across issues. So forest and species loss from animal agriculture and extractive industries. I think 5-6 years ago, people working on those issues were quite separated. If you cared about timber companies, you often weren't looking at what are feed companies doing, how is the soy frontier expanding. I think that's changing, and I think that that's very encouraging. Marine life, we see plastic straws as a kind of entry point, but I think the effect of climate change on oceans, I think the exploitation of marine life is also really growing, and I think that's leading to people who care about animals, environment, ethics, food systems, public health. There's much more overlap in their interests and increasingly, not huge yet, but overlap in their work. Okay, and then I just want to end with a few words. I mean, I could have put many words on this slide, but I think to get to where we need to for animals, for our own species, and for the planet as a whole, we're going to need ambition, we're going to need vision, we're going to need accountability, and we're going to need another word that I'm out of time for. Okay, I just want to leave you with two quick thoughts. One is the example. I was going to show slides of two people who I think really embody this, and I will say this very briefly. One is Greta Thunberg. I think you all know she's a teenage climate activist. And she's a vegan, and I was really pleased to see that. Not surprised, because I think she's very authentic, very serious. So she basically says, look, we need system change, but we also need individual change, because when we model how the world needs to change, that helps us make our case, helps us give legitimacy. And then the final one from one of my mentors, Wangari Maathai, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who said, those of us who know the problems, know the challenges, know what's at stake, We are restless. We have to remain restless. We have to work hard. We can't tire. We have to keep moving forward. And so I'd leave you with that, even if you are slightly tired, that there's really a lot of work to do and a lot of space to step into, and especially younger people. I would really encourage you in that. There's a lot of potential for important work, and time is racing, right? We are struggling with making the changes quickly enough to really save the planet and animals and all that we care about. So I'll leave you with that. And then, Brighter Green has a website, social media. I'll have some materials on the Culture and Animals Foundation table outside. So please come and talk. And I'll be here till Saturday afternoon, so I'd really be happy to talk to many of you. So thank you very much.
Woo! Thank you, Mia. Great presentation. Incredible work with China and with the NGOs. Come on up, AP, the first U.S. Senator who jumps on this environmental issue, full stop, will go down as a hero. We have a statement from Senator Mark Warner of Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was telling Jane that I just really didn't want to follow her very enthusiastic and energetic presentation. I know. Thank you, Mia. I learned a lot. So I'm AP. I'm the outreach representative for U.S. Senator Mark Warner, who is the senior senator of Virginia. So welcome to Virginia. My lucky job is that I get to represent the senator when he can't make it to different events, such as this animal rights conference. And I always have to say that you can think of me as the shorter Asian female version of a very tall U.S. senator. But I have a letter from Senator Warner, and you'll be very happy to know that he is not running for president, and he is no interest running for president, and he's not running for re-election until next year. So I'm not politicking or politicizing anything at all. But going with the policy, he does have a very short, brief introduction to what he has been doing in the field of animal rights. So dear friends, I'm pleased to extend my warmest greetings to all who are gathered for the Animal Rights National Conference. This event provides an important opportunity to network with fellow animal activists while gaining skills to improve your advocacy. Your efforts have been tremendously impactful in promoting the humane treatment of animals. I have consistently supported measures to protect the health and well-being of animals. At the federal level, the Animal Welfare Act, or AWA, was enacted to ensure the humane care and treatment of animals during transport or use for research or exhibition purposes. As you may know, each Congress, there are a number of initiatives introduced to strengthen the AWA and the protections afforded to animals. I'm a co-sponsor of Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture, or PACT Act, which would amend the federal criminal code to prohibit extreme acts of animal cruelty and subject individuals found guilty of torturing animals to felony charges, fines, and up to 7 years in prison. I'm also pleased that the Pet and Women's Safety, or PAWS Act, a bill that I co-sponsored in the 115th Congress, was signed into law on December 20th of last year. This legislation expands existing federal domestic violence protections to include protection for the pets of domestic violence victims. And I'm going to shorten this because it keeps on going on. I have also recently introduced legislation to protect Virginia's horses from the abusive practice known as soring. I actually don't know what soring is. Ugh. But on April 3rd of this year, Senator Mike Crapo from Idaho and I reintroduced the Prevent All Soring Tactics, or PAST Act, to close important loopholes in the Horse Protection Act, or HPA. The PAST Act would amend the HPA to eliminate the failed practice of industry self-policing, prohibit the use of devices implicated in the practice of soring, and provide for penalties that will serve as a more effective deterrent than those currently in place, which have perpetuated a business-as-usual mentality among industry participants. I'm shortening it now. I will continue to be an advocate for animals in the Senate, and I encourage you to continue your activism. I extend my best wishes for an informative conference and continued progress in the years to come. Sincerely, Mark R. Warner, United States Senate. Thank you very much. Have a great conference.
Wow, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I will keep this. Thank you. All right. Are you ready? Dr. Sailesh Rao in the house. Woo!
Thank you so much, Jane. I want to just give you a brief backstory about this movie that Jane has created. I'm thoroughly indebted to this generation, my granddaughter's generation, because I don't know how many of you have been depressed about animal liberation. Raise your hands. Yes. I've been working on climate change for the last 12 years, and to really reverse climate change, you have to achieve human liberation, earth liberation, and animal liberation all together. So you can imagine how depressed I was. I was very depressed about it in 2009 and 2010. And then my granddaughter was born. And I held her for the first time in my arms, and I had this sense of perfection. So I realized that my depression was wrong, that I'm not telling the right story. That if we tell a different story, we can see that we belong exactly as we are, and we will achieve what we need to achieve. So that's how it started, okay? As soon as I came back from me seeing her for the first time, I started writing my first book, Carbon Dharma, and you'll see copies of that in Jane's table. And then I tried to find the new story. That took me 6 years. So by 2016, I wrote my second book, which is Carbon Yoga, which is about the new story. And then by that time, I realized that things are happening so much faster that we have to really get this going very quickly. And I had made this calculation that if we continue doing what we're doing, then by 2026, we're on track to wipe out almost all wildlife on the planet. So this was in 2016, and my granddaughter was 6 years old. And I was reading her a story to put her to bed. And at the end of the story, she asked me, "Grandpa, who were the first human beings?" And I tried to explain to her about evolution. So I told her, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mother by your hand, and you get your mother to bring her mother to stand by her side. So you create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you get a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they would merge. There'd be only one single line. Both lines are going to say, "That's my mother too." So immediately she sat up in bed and she said, "Are you telling me that animals are my family?" And I said, "Yeah, they are your family." She said, "Then why are people eating my family?" "Grandpa, make them stop." And she started bawling. "Make them stop. They're eating my family. Make them stop." And I was trying to, I was trying to get her to stop and go to sleep. So I said, "This is my job. This is what I've been trying to do for the last 7 years." And she said, "This is your job? Do you know you haven't done your job? When will you do your job?" And I said, "We have to do it by 2026, otherwise we are all in big trouble." She said, "Promise?" And I said, "Well, I'll promise you. Give me a pinky promise?" "Yes, I give you a pinky promise." So that's how the project Vegan World 2026 started. It started, and then I met this force of nature called Jane Velez-Mitchell. And she's accelerating it. She's making it happen. So it's all of us. We all have to get together. We are in this together. We want a vegan world. We have to go and do it ourselves. No one is going to give it to us. So that's what this movie is about. Thank you so much, Jane.
You are my hero. All right, are we ready to roll? You can come on down. All right, are we ready to roll it? Okay, and I just want to give a couple of shouts out. Jeff Adams, who is manning the camera there, did such an incredible job editing from North Carolina, and he's here with his young son. Yes, and Anita Crines, if you're here, she was the inspiration for this documentary in the sense that she told me, go out and videotape Dr. Sailesh Rao. And Anita, you are my hero. You and Sailesh and everybody here give me hope for humanity. Thank you so much. Let's roll the tape. Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? But out riding fences, boy, for so long now. This will start in a second. Here we go. I do want to say that this is just a team effort. I want to thank everybody from Jane Unchained. We have a digital news network, 70 contributors around the world. Some of the footage you're going to see was shot by those contributors. We got Paige Parsons Roach here going live right now. All these people do all this. We got Danny Rukin, who's one of our incredible contributors here. Here we go. Thank you to all.
This affects everything.
Something that we can all do, and it's something that's really creating a very positive change.
Maybe the solution is to look in the mirror.
We have been living in this system of normalized violence, and we've been killing animals at such a fast pace. I mean, we kill more animals in 4 to 12 hours than all the humans that ever died in wars throughout human history put together.
Why did we have to create a planet that looks dead, that kills things, that kills animals left and right, that kills trees, that kills rhinoceroses, that kills? I mean, that's all we do. You know, we're killing machines.
52% of all wild vertebrates died between 1970 and 2010, and more of them died in 2010 than they died in 1970. So you can imagine that there is this exponential growth in the killing of wild vertebrates, wild animals. By 2012, it had become 58%. So if we just follow that trend, by 2026, they're going to be 100% gone. When the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come unto the earth, from many colors, classes, creeds, who by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again.
We are here live in Arizona at the headquarters of Voice America Radio with Dr. Sailesh Rao, who is a man who was instrumental in the creation of the internet. He is going to use the same process that they used to create the internet to create a vegan world by 2026.
First of all, you have to understand why we have to do this so quickly. And so that was the beginning. You know, when I realized how fast we were killing wild animals, if you look at the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report, it gives you statistics that tell you very clearly we have to change by 2026, otherwise we are in big trouble.
When you say big trouble, what do you mean?
Death and extinction. This is a very serious issue. If you're killing all the wild animals off, then we're literally killing ourselves off. It's something that we have never ever faced before as humanity. We have been living in this system of normalized violence, and we've been killing animals at such a fast pace.
Climate change is an amorphous issue. It's methane and all sorts of things that we can't really, with our own eyes, calculate. But when I realized that we're giving planet Earth a buzz cut, that we're destroying all the forests in order to grow crops to feed tens of billions of farm animals that we kill every year, then I really got it. Because we're only 7.6 billion humans. Our carbon footprint is not actually that big. The Earth could easily accommodate us, and maybe even a billion more. more or more than that. It's the animals we're eating. Meanwhile, we're running around telling each other that we're animal lovers, which is the tragic irony of it all. But all those animals have to eat. People don't realize 70% or more of all soy is fed to farm animals. Corn, grain, it's all going into farm animals that then don't produce that much food.
Hi, baby. Hi, sweetie. Oh, hi. I just wanted to say goodbye to you and tell you how much we love you. We're so sorry. We're so sorry, baby.
In industrial agriculture, you have to build things for them. You have to keep them packed tightly. You have to heat them. You have to cool them. You have to take care of their manure. You have to transport them. All of the aspects of animal agriculture add up to the single biggest problem, and including methane, which you want to call a cow fart, you can.
It takes 8 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of beef. We could stop destroying the forests. We could end world hunger, human world hunger, by giving that food directly to starving children. And we could save all these animals, and we could stop climate change if we just changed our diets.
The struggle to find land in order to grow crops, in order to feed non-human animals, is rapidly depleting the amount of forest that's left.
Most people don't even think about the fact that less than 1/3 of the Earth's surface is land. And not all of that land is even viable for agriculture. And of that agricultural land, about 3/4 is used for animal agriculture in some way, shape, or form. It's wildly inefficient.
So as a byproduct, there are no places for non-human animals such as chimpanzees, gorillas, and many other species to go. It's going to lead to their extinction if it doesn't stop, and it's going to lead to their extinction soon.
So what would you say to conservationists who still are eating animals?
Well, you need to call yourself something else other than a conservationist.
What's the problem? What's the solution?
I'm here with a very special message. Inside of here is my daughter. I want her to have a good planet to live on. Not just a planet to live on, because this planet will survive us, but a good planet to live on. And part of that is internalizing what's really happening with our environment. You cannot be an environmentalist without being vegan.
A vegan family here at the climate change protest. Husband, wife, and 2 kids, all vegan. They're also supporting the Green New Deal. What I'm starting to see here, doing an informal survey, is that most kids are aware of the connection between animal agriculture and climate change. When they talked about veganism or not eating animals or the problems with animal agriculture, they kept coming back to the cruelty. Even at a climate change march, that seemed to be the biggest motivator to not eat animals.
My name is Perla Alvarez. So many of us are so busy working and finding a way to survive in this world, but we should also find a way to protect it, and that's by going vegan and also protecting the animals. They're important as well. They have feelings, and I believe that the torture that they're having is horrible. I'm trying to also help my family become vegan because they have health issues.
Carla Veronica Alegria. I've been vegan 2 years now. First, it was for health reasons. My family have health problems like diabetes, cholesterol, so that's one of the main reasons I wanted to change.
I've been trying to get Pope Francis to go vegan for Lent, and as kids, I think this is going to be our planet, so if we want a planet, we have to do something about it. So thank you.
Fight climate change with diet change. What does that mean?
It means that you should go vegan, because when you go vegan, it's the #1 thing you can do to reduce climate change.
This is Donnie Moss with airturn.net at the student climate strike in New York City.
You can change 1 million light bulbs. You can turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth. But changing what is on your fork makes the biggest impact of all. If we don't do this and make huge changes in the next 5 to 10 years, our kids are all going to be climate refugees.
If we don't address the impact that factory farming has on our planet,
then we're just scratching the surface.
We're overfishing the oceans, and 40% of all the fish caught in the ocean is fed to pigs and chickens and domestic salmon. So we're literally eating the oceans alive. So if we put an end to industrialized fishing, that go a long ways to allowing the ocean to repair itself. And if the ocean repairs itself, we can solve this problem because it is the regulator of climate. The single greatest absorption of CO2, the production of 70% of the production of oxygen that we breathe comes from phytoplankton, and we've diminished phytoplankton populations by about 40% since 1950. So all of these issues should be addressed, but it's not getting the attention that it deserves.
The leading cause of species extinction, habitat destruction, ocean dead zones, water pollution. I think it is heartening that the teenager Greta Thunberg, who started this whole youth climate movement, is a vegan, convinced her family to go vegan, and talks about the need for people to give up animal products in order to stop climate change. And hopefully that will become more of the messaging for the students and youth and everyone involved in this climate movement.
Moin. I am very proud to stand with you here today in Hamburg. You, the German students, have made history, and you should be very proud of yourselves. For way too long, the politicians and the people in power have gotten away with not doing anything to fight the climate crisis. But we will make sure that they will not get away with it any longer. We will continue to school strike until they do something. And we are striking because we have done our homework and they have not. And yes, we are angry. We are angry because the older generations are continuing to stealing our future right now. And they are continuing to doing this, and we will not let them do that anymore.
Some climate change folks begin to understand. The politicians know that there are enormous animal agricultural interests, that it's $1 trillion industry that are arrayed against them, and they have not yet decided that it's that they want to oppose them. That day is coming because it has to come, because a climate catastrophe is coming our way.
Certificate declaring Jane Goodall Day to my personal hero since childhood, Jane Goodall.
85th birthday of legendary hero Jane Goodall.
Regarding food, what would you tell consumers?
I would tell consumers to eat less or no meat, to move towards a plant-based diet.
Can you discuss the role of animal agriculture in deforestation and habitat destruction?
Well, in a nutshell, animal agriculture, where animals are kept in these intensive factory farms, one is shockingly cruel, and we have to realize that farm animals too have personalities and emotions, can feel happiness and fear. But also to feed all the billions of animals that are now kept in these conditions, it means destroying environments to grow the grain to feed them, which means the use of much fossil fuel, giving out CO2 emissions, adding to the greenhouse gases and climate change. It uses a lot of water. In addition to all of that, the animals produce methane gas as a byproduct of digestion, and that is a very vicious greenhouse gas. And finally, these creatures are given antibiotics just to keep them alive, not necessarily because they're sick, and the bacteria are building up resistance. And as we destroy the forests and other habitats, it means that we are actually stealing the future of our children, because we are part of the natural world. We need the natural world, and we're destroying it so fast that unless we all get together now it will be too late.
Wherever you are on this journey, I hope that I can help you through the Kind Diet or the Kind Mama in terms of just our best way to get everyone on board is to be our most vibrant, healthy selves and to feel our best. We're walking billboards, right? If you feel good and you look good, people want to know what you're up to, right? And so being that your healthiest version of yourself is the way forward. And if you can, hopefully with the Kind Diet, I can help you to just get more in the superhero zone so you feel your best. And depending on anywhere you are, I welcome you. If you eat meat all the time and you just start eating less of it, we are so grateful for that choice. Not only the animals are grateful for that choice, your body is grateful for that choice, the earth is grateful for that choice, and obviously the people who are starving all over the world. We have 10 years to turn it around. I don't know how aware everyone is of what a serious situation climate change is. So every time you eat a plant-based meal, you can pat yourself on the back. It's the most powerful thing you can do.
You know, when you're vegan, one thing that I found was that all my vegan friends, one of their regrets was that they didn't go vegan sooner. And for me, my regret as an activist is that I didn't become active sooner. And I see a lot of heads nodding. I really invite you to make a commitment in your life to not just be vegan and be like, I'm not going to take part in the system, but I'm going to use my life, I'm going to use my time and energy to actually make a difference, because that will make a difference. And let me tell you that by being involved in the community, I'm 100% convinced that we will see a vegan world within our lifetime.
So we are here to start the ball rolling for a vegan world by 2026. You know why we are doing this? I don't have to go through the negative side of this at all. We have to do this because we are not a monumentally stupid species. Clearly, the system of normalized violence is going to end, whether we like it or not. It's going to end because the earth is saying it's no more.
This is PCH at 5 p.m. tonight. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the trees are going up in flames.
Within 8 years, climate change is going to be crazy. It is telling us, the earth is telling us we have to change. And there is this one light that you see at the end of the tunnel. And you see that light, and that's nonviolence. If you have a system of normalized nonviolence in place, everything will be fine. The planet will be fine, we'll be fine, animals will be fine. So we have that solution, and we just have to go grab it and take it, right? And build the structure around it so that we can now transition to that.
You're one of the founders of the internet, one of the creators of the internet, and you then began working with Al Gore. What happened? Why did you leave him?
He didn't want to talk about animal agriculture at all, and I thought that we are doing a disservice to the people if you don't tell them what is going on. And animal agriculture has such a huge impact on climate change, and it's not being addressed at all. He became vegan. And from what I hear, everything, all the food there is vegan when people come for training. But there is so much fear about upsetting the system, about upsetting the people who have the money in the system. There's so much fear. It's a fear-driven system that we have now. Basically, people are being coerced into just continuing along the same path.
You're also one of the people behind two incredible documentaries, Cowspiracy and What the Health. Processed meat has officially been determined by the World Health Organization to be cancer-causing. That's just official. That means bacon, hot dogs, deli slices, ham slices, you know, all the things, the way people eat meat.
Exactly.
Now, if you saw a parent feeding a cigarette to their kid, you'd say, let me call child services. There's something wrong here. But these parents are shoving these nuggets down these kids' throats, and they don't see anything wrong with it, but it's cancer-causing. How do we fight all that? We are dealing with a system that's aligned against us.
What I'm suggesting we do is we build a new one rather than fighting the old one.
Yeah.
This is how you create change. You know, Buckminster Fuller said that very clearly.
Yeah.
So instead of changing the old, just build the new. Show people how good it is in the new. And then they will come along and say, I want to be there, not where I am. So as more and more people come with us, then the majority will say, well, we should be there too, you know, because everyone is going that way. So it becomes like a trend. And so we are a herd animal, you know, we just go along with the herd. Gandhi has shown that one person can make a difference, make a huge difference.
The pig trial has increased awareness about the individuality and suffering of pigs going to slaughter, and the imperative of going vegan and not looking away when an animal is in need. But we need to go further. The law needs to recognize pigs and all animals as persons, not property. Pigs should not be given the degrading status of property. They are someone. They have feelings, they're sentient, they're self-aware, they have complex personalities just like you and me, just like dogs. I hope this case encourages more people to bear witness at a slaughterhouse in their community.
In fact, I think he's shown that it's only through a few people that all changes happen. It isn't groups of people, it's just one person makes this unreasonable stand and says, no, I don't want this to happen anymore. I want to change this. And then people start coalescing around the person.
Use the life that you have to create a world where compassion, tolerance, and equality are no longer considered extreme or militant, but are instead the foundations and baseline for a just and fair society.
So this is really how all change happens. So Gandhi did that in India 100 years ago, and now he tried to create a system of normalized nonviolence too. But in his case, he really didn't have all the tools and technologies that we do today.
Ryuji Chu, a social media influencer, you wanted to talk about that.
If you look at what's happening today, and you look at who kids are looking up to, the next generation, they're looking up at social media influencers. They're looking up to people who just put out content on the internet.
I'm a hip-hop artist, social entrepreneur, creative activist. I've been vegan for almost 2 years now. In 2 months, dropped 20 pounds, my blood pressure went all the way in the green, my mental health, my spiritual health, I just felt so much cleaner.
So sometimes you'll see people who are famous on the internet. These are not traditional media celebrities. These are social media influencers.
Hi, my name is James Aspey. I'm a vegan animal rights activist from Sydney, Australia, well known for taking a year-long vow of silence for the animals.
You can check out his videos on YouTube. James, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself for our viewers?
Yeah, I'm somebody who grew up not really understanding who animals were, so I didn't really like them. I didn't think their lives had any value, and therefore I thought it was pointless to give any consideration to their feelings, their emotions, their lives in general. I ate meat every single day for my whole life. I didn't feel bad about it at all. I watched footage of animals being slaughtered. I still felt no shame, all because I felt you need to eat animals to survive and be healthy. When I learned finally that you can actually live and thrive on a vegan diet, in fact live longer and reduce your chances of developing many diseases, basically just live a much healthier life, then I questioned, well, if we don't need to kill animals to survive and thrive, what do we do it for? And when I realized that there's no justification in the violence that's any better than because we like how they taste, I realized I was totally out of alignment with the person I was striving to be, which is a compassionate, respectful, loving, basically just a non-violent person. I don't think it's okay to go and stab somebody to death. So why is it okay for me to pay somebody to stab somebody to death?
And if you look at the crowds of people around them, it's insane. They get more public attention than many traditional media celebrities.
We are here today for the calves taken away from their mothers. We are here today for the hens who are exploited for their eggs. We are here today for the chickens who are exploited and murdered for their flesh. We are here today for the pigs who are locked in farrowing crates. We are here today for the lambs on the way to the slaughterhouse. And we are here today for the millions upon trillions of animals who are mercilessly dragged out of the ocean. The marine animals who are killed without any dignity or respect.
They haven't gone through gatekeepers, and so that could be anyone. That could be me, that could be you, that could be anyone. And we have to understand that so many people are gonna do things because the people that they look up to do the same things, and we can become those people.
We can just take a 2-minute video of us talking, or of some slaughterhouse footage, or of a conversation during the Cube of Truth, and it can reach millions of people. I've had videos reach 13 million people, 12 million people, people all over the world like that, with a thought, with a photo, with a video, with a meal, a vegan meal recipe, with information. And people are getting educated and informed at a rate that has never been seen before.
By me putting out content on the internet and being like, hey, this is what I'm about. I'm vegan, this is my life is awesome, I have awesome friends. People can see that and look up to that and be like, wow, that's cool. I want to do that too. And The reason I think social media is so important too is because of this idea of tribes. Today we have this opportunity to change the world by creating communities. I'm not going to get to the whole world as one person. There's 7.6 billion people in the world. I can't speak to everyone. But what if I can speak to 1,000 people? And I can not only speak to them, but empower them to create their own community. And then they can empower their community to create more communities. And in that way, we can really spread a movement.
I'm married to a multi-generational cattle rancher. I went vegan October 31st, 2014. What happened is I started questioning my husband. I started wondering why we weren't eating our own animals. You know, we always bought meat from the store and we sold the babies to the sale barn. I want to know why we don't eat our own animals. And he said, because I know them, Renee. And that didn't ring right for me. It took about 4 years of pressure from me to my husband for me to finally draw the line in the sand where I could no longer participate in the violence and the cruelty of sending the baby calves to the sale barn. You know, we are creating a new model that other ranchers are going to naturally want to gravitate to because the old paradigm isn't working. You know, dairy farmers are committing suicide. You hear about it all the time. The environment is being ravaged by all these hurricanes. So these animals are being drowned and insurance companies are having to come in and constantly overtake, you know, and help these ranchers out again, one more bailout after another. So ranchers are looking, they just do not know what to do.
This chicken farmer, cattle rancher family in the heart of chicken ranch country has gone vegan. They used to send to slaughter 100,000 chickens every 52 days. Get your mind around this. They have a cattle ranch operation, beautiful cows. Right now they have 205 cows that they refuse to send to slaughter. Cattle rancher, chicken farmers gone vegan.
So we are in one of the most biodiverse regions of the world. About 5% of the biodiversity of the planet is supposed to be in this region. And it is being cut down and turned into cattle ranches. So you can see, you know, cows. It has become like the cattle ranching capital. This is why I think it's important for us to come to Costa Rica and help them reverse this situation so that the biodiversity is preserved.
He who has a why to live for can endure almost any harm. This is why the why is so important. If you have been studying what's going on in the environment, the why becomes almost obvious. We know why we have to have a vegan world. In 2009, I was at this sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India. I got the most depressed at that sanctuary because I saw how beautiful nature is. You just leave nature alone and you get back the forest. We just take human beings out, all other species are happy. They create a beautiful forest, they drop their seeds and new trees are born. And here we are, we take everything and we flush it down the toilet somewhere and it goes, you know. So the way we are interacting with nature, it looks like we don't belong. It turns out that in the last 3 million years, the Earth has been going through so many glacial periods and interglacial periods. So ice ages. And during an ice age, life struggles to survive. Life literally dies out because it's covered by ice. So 90,000 years you get this ice age, and then for 10,000 years you get this interglacial period where the ice retreats and life expands. Over the last 12,000 years or so, we came out of the previous ice age and into the current interglacial period. And for the last 10,000 years, the temperature has stayed pretty constant. And the reason is that human beings started burning down forests. And this is what we have done over the last 10,000 years. Unknowingly, we kept the temperature constant over the last 10,000 years, so that the Earth did not go back to an ice age 6,000 years ago. So in that sense, the world as we know it was created 6,000 years ago. That's when humans took over the climate of the planet. And in the last 200 years, we discovered fossil fuels. And we dug them up and we burnt them. So that's also carbon. That's stored carbon from all the trees that lived millions of years ago. So we took them out and we burnt them. And in the process, we have raised it The carbon dioxide levels have now come to over 410 parts per million. So the Earth is getting hotter as a result of that. The Earth is getting hotter, we are killing animals, we are destroying forests still, and so we have no choice but to return the forest. Okay? When you return the forest, you can sequester all that extra carbon that's in the atmosphere back on the ground. You'll give back land for the animals to recover. All that carbon that we have put from the fossil fuels will stay in the atmosphere and it will keep the temperature constant. So we can return the temperature back to what it was 200 years ago and bring life back. That's the only way out that we have. That's the only way out where I see light. To me, it's as if nature has said, you now understand what's going on. You now know you have to bring back life. Okay? That's the only way you are going to survive. Otherwise, you are also going to die. And we are the thermostat species for the planet. It's our job as human beings to maintain conditions of climate and weather, the environment for all life to flourish.
I was just looking at that beautiful tree. It's a tall one. It's called mountain guarumo. It's funny how it fights to get light, then it flourishes beautifully. We are at the Nicoya Peninsula, that is in the northern area of Costa Rica, and we are exactly between the Nicoya Gulf and the Pacific Ocean.
So the mission of Vegan World 2026 is to co-create a culture of normalized nonviolence. So we are on top of a hill that used to be coffee farms and cattle ranches, and it has now been turned into a native forest. And the idea is to understand how to live in harmony with nature, so that we are not running away from animals, we're not running away from spiders or killing them off when they come into our homes. We are figuring out how to live in harmony with nature. We have to transition to a way of living where we can return land back to nature, bring back the forest, bring back the wild animals, so that we can sequester carbon, heal the climate, and solve the biodiversity loss issue. So essentially returning Earth back to its pristine form, Eden, back to nature. We are taking care of animals as opposed to constantly killing them, which is what we are doing now. I mean, the conditions are right for a rainbow. The sun is just peeking out.
Critical mass is less than 3% of a population moving in a particular direction.
There's no way to humanely kill an animal.
When you become a vegan, you are actually regaining your purpose.
Awakening to Survival 2026. We envision a world of love, unity, and abundance, but this requires us to change course at this perilous time.
Since 1970, more than half of wild animals have been killed.
At the rate we are killing wildlife, we will virtually have no wild animals left by the year 2026.
This loss means whales, penguins, monkeys, koala bears, tigers, eagles, giraffes. None of these animals would be left except in zoos.
This is the biggest crisis of our lifetime because it threatens our very existence.
This horrific milestone will mark an ecological turning point.
Year zero will present unimaginable extreme weather on a scale that the human race has never experienced. Extreme drought, massive wildfires, flood events.
That extreme weather will in turn trigger political and societal disruption and chaos as millions are displaced and become refugees.
From cities to rural areas, land and homes will become uninhabitable.
Animal agriculture is the leading cause of global deforestation, habitat destruction, soil degradation, wildlife extinction, and ocean dead zones because it's so resource intensive and highly inefficient.
Animals eat almost 40 times what they produce as meat, dairy, or eggs. 83% of agricultural land is currently used for raising farm animals for food.
The good news is more than 80% of the food humans consume is already plant-based. Less than 20% of the food humans consume is meat, dairy, and eggs.
When we reduce that percentage to 0 by 2026, we will have made substantial progress towards reversing climate change, wildlife extinction, and deforestation,
thereby preventing year 0.
It is totally unnecessary to eat animals for health or survival. Following a plant-based lifestyle can reverse and prevent 14 of the 15 leading causes of death.
Due to the increasing variety of plant-based food options, it is now easier than ever to go vegan.
Therefore, it is totally unnecessary to exploit, enslave, torture, and kill animals, or to engage in institutionalized animal abuse.
We reject the system of forced breeding, mutilation, and killing of animals.
We demand the system of normalized violence be replaced by a system of normalized nonviolence.
We commit to supporting this vision and to assist in the joy and wellness of all beings through a vegan lifestyle.
Our guiding principles are: 1. All animals have the inalienable right to live free of exploitation, forced breeding, torture, and slaughter.
2. We reject the idea that religious beliefs, cultural traditions, and economic arguments are valid reasons for denying them these inalienable rights.
3. We believe in the intersectionality of these basic rights with inalienable human rights.
Compassion for all life is infinitely sustainable.
Our demands: government stop subsidizing animal agriculture and start promoting organic plant agriculture.
2. Media report the truth about animal agriculture's devastating impact on human health, the environment, and our fellow creatures.
We plead: 1. Environmental, conservation, health, animal welfare, and religious organizations adopt a public vegan policy. 2. Consumers stop buying animal products.
And I'm so grateful to all of you, for coming together to start this process off. I went through something very similar with the internet. We did exactly the same thing during the internet era. A whole bunch of people got together and we decided to create these documents that list out the best practices for how do you make any connection on the internet. In most cases, we just took what was already there and said that seemed to be the best way to do it, and we endorsed it. And wherever they didn't know how to do it, we actually set up a task force and we figured out how to do it.
How are y'all doing?
Our question was within the workforce development umbrella. And the question was, how do we provide jobs for those leaving slaughterhouses and other animal harming jobs?
Nobody wants to work at a slaughterhouse. It's alternative production. And when you're good with your hands, farmers of old could do anything.
There's a tremendous commonality between chicken farming and mushroom farming.
One of the answers is going to be grassroots, literally, like individuals being there, boots on the ground.
So if we, as vegans, we go to them, walk with them.
Here's a bridge. Come and spend your life working to save the animals.
It's an excellent. So same if we add to the same process. Right? We have these incredible companies which are plant-based.
So our group came up with, I think, a really exciting campaign idea to start a campaign that gets plant-based companies to offer first right of refusal for jobs to current slaughterhouse workers. Isn't that cool?
So the way it worked this weekend, we basically identified questions in different areas. What are the questions we have? How do we make the transition? So it's all about how. Because we know what to do. We know where we are doing it, when we are doing it, why we are doing it. So all the other questions we have answered is only how do we do it. So we broke it down into pieces. When 100 people are coming together and asking questions, you get a variety of questions. You get this diversity. It's impossible for one person to ever do that. And then people can walk around and say, okay, I'd like to address that question. I want to work on that question. So then we create these study groups around these questions that haven't been answered.
How do we end subsidizing animal products for food?
And as a corollary, how do we get animal agriculture to pay for their fair share of land and water that they use? One of the main problems is this intrinsic marriage between government and industry. We have, for example, the USDA is this revolving door organization that governs big ag, but most of the people that are in leadership positions are former big ag employees or executives.
And then the study groups become formal task forces, so we can then go off and figure out what are the best practices for addressing these questions. So then everyone has an opportunity to start a study group in the larger community. If the larger community wants that to become a task force, it becomes a task force. And then we come up with the recommendations. And then we have a cohesive set of recommendations as to how this new system of normalized nonviolence looks like.
Talk about an issue that is really verboten in mainstream advertiser-based radio or television, and that is how we're killing the planet with animal agriculture. And why is it verboten? If you look at the industries that advertise, fast food, pharmaceuticals, a lot of the industries that would collapse if people got healthy, switched to a plant-based diet.
The world that we are in now is based on normalized violence, which is really about killing things off. And we are killing things off at such a fast pace that we are in danger of killing ourselves as well. That's a frenzied rate of killing. And all because we are making money. Somebody is making money off of all this killing.
We're live at a vigil for pigs. We have to wait until the truck stops. Look at this poor baby. We're stacked up high. Hello, Angel. We love you. We love you, honey. We love you. Look at the number of people who are here giving water till the very last second so that these animals can, they're all going to die. They're all going to go to their deaths right now. Yeah. Meet your bacon. Meet your bacon. Meet your ham. Meet your hot dogs. They had mothers. Wake up. Wake up. My God. What runs through you when you see them?
Just absolutely sad and distraught. I feel like people need to know that this is the reality. People need to know that this is where their food comes from, and that these creatures experience pain every single moment of their lives until the very end. And we're just here to show them love and compassion in their last moments. Some of them don't ever get to see any sort of human interaction of kindness.
So we have a system that's based on, making money off death, disease, and destruction. Death for the animals, disease for human beings, and destruction for the planet.
Oh.
That's the system that we are in, because it's a system based on fear, it's based on war, continuous war, endless war. It's all about violence. It's a very violent system. And so nature is now telling us if we don't stop this and change to a system of normalized nonviolence by 2026, you're done.
And why do you come out?
I come out for a variety of reasons. I come out to support this community and to draw attention to it. I come out to document it so that I can share it on social media. But also, I come out to remind myself that animals are not an abstraction. A lot of times we live in urban and suburban environments, and we only deal with animals, we deal with pictures of animals, we deal with videos of animals, and we sometimes need to be reminded that animals are 100% flesh and blood, sensitive, sentient creatures. And sometimes that can be accomplished by visiting a sanctuary, which is a much happier way of being reminded of the physical reality of animals. But sometimes nights when they have truck after truck after truck, just being reminded that that's the reality for over 100 billion animals on the planet. I've been a vegan now for 31 years, and animal rights is my life's work. And one of the wonderful things about being an animal rights activist is most people already love animals. All we have to do is create that connection. People love dogs, they love cats, they love other animals, but extending that compassion, extending that connection to all animals, that's kind of our job. We just have to remind them that cows and pigs and chickens and these are just as much sentient, sensitive animals as their companion animals. Ideally, anyone who's concerned or interested should come out and see the reality of the animals that they're eating.
This is horrific. Oh my God, this is horrific. And this is what it looks like to allow yourself to feel the pain of a fellow being. So it's called empathy, and we're lacking in it.
The reason that we're all here today is because we take responsibility. When you see something that's wrong with the world or with your life or with anything, it's always your responsibility to make a difference. That's what being a leader is. So when it comes to this, when it's like something that happens on a global scale and the responsibility is so diffused because you're like, yo, we're like 7.6 billion people in the world, so why would I step up to make a difference? And when you have that kind of situation, most people will not take responsibility. The people who do step up and take responsibility, those are the people that will be celebrated as visionaries in the future.
How is it that you have such confidence that we're going to be able to achieve this?
History is full of examples of things that shifted. So I'm saying we have to shift now, so let's work on it. Let's get it done.
Give us some examples of what you think the parallels are.
With the internet, it was, in 8 years, we went from something that nobody really knew to something that everyone thought they absolutely had to have in their life. And it was just 8 years, from 1995 to 2003. I witnessed it happen. Moon landing was also something like that. In 1962, Kennedy, when he made that speech at Rice University in Texas, a lot of people scoffed at him, saying, you want to put a man on the moon? But then it inspired Americans, and within 8 years, within 7 years actually, man was on the moon, right, in 1969. So there again, it was just breaking down the larger problem into smaller pieces and addressing each one of them and putting it together. That's what NASA did.
We are on the right side of history. We're on the ethical side of history, so this is going to be over. And then most people are going to flip when social pressures flip the other way and many people start being vegan and it starts being an actual thing. And people will be like, oh, most people are doing it, I'll do it too. Then people like us, who now, a lot of people call us heretics, a lot of people call us crazy, like all this kind of stuff. Then you'll see that in 20, 30 years, you'll have all our friends hitting us up being like, yo, you're a visionary. And that's what we're going to get. And that's 100%.
Yeah, it is historic. I do believe one day we will look back, first of all, on what we do to animals and all hang our heads in shame, just like vegans do now about how we used to contribute to it. But that'll be not just 2% of the population, it'll be 99% of the population.
My name is Mario Fabry, and right now I host a cooking show called Trying Vegan with Mario.
Quarter cup of this nutritional yeast on top. That's gonna add in that cheesy flakiness, a lot of pesto, normally made with Parmesan cheese. We switch it out for some hemp seeds and some nutritional yeast. Much healthier for you. We're cutting dairy out.
But growing up, I actually worked at my dad's Italian sausage factory, was raised on the standard American diet, and there was no real way around it. Everything my friends, my family, everything that people were eating was largely meat and cheese. And then I got to a point where I started to learn and be able to make my own food decisions. Maybe the food that we grow up on, maybe the stuff that we've been told to eat isn't actually looking out for our best interests. Heart disease is one of the #1 killers in the United States. As soon as you hear that and you make the connection that that is from cholesterol that comes from animals, you just put 2 and 2 together.
It's inevitable that their industry will go away. It will end. So if they were smart, even business-wise, they would listen to us when we're telling them their industry has no future. The planet can't sustain it, and human consciousness will not go along with it. We're evolving too quickly.
Vegan companies like Beyond Meat are now going public, and this is where the smart money is going. We are hitting the tipping point.
Feel it, believe it. The change is coming. The sun will one day set on this world and a new dawn will rise. Out of the ashes of violence, hope will rise. Now we as a movement exists in the millions of individuals, but together we move as one. And as one, we cannot be stopped. We will not be stopped. And these industries, the ones who exploit others, fear us, and they should fear us. For every single day, our numbers grow stronger, our conviction grows harder, and that change becomes ever more inevitable than it was the day previous. And they fear us because they know that we will not stop fighting, that we will never take a day's rest, and we will never take a day's break until the animals are liberated from the shackles that our species has imprisoned them within. But the fight that we face is not a fight of violence. It's not a fight against nations or religions. It is a fight against ignorance and apathy. And the only weapon that we need is the truth and a voice from which we are obliged to speak it. And we must speak that truth. With every second of life that we are given, we must speak that truth. The world that we want, that vegan world, exists out there in front of us in the palm of our hands. And all we have to do is reach out and take it. It's not going to be given to us. No one is going to hand it to us, but there it exists in front of each and every one of us, waiting for us to seize it. So feel it, believe in it, see it, manifest it, but importantly, create it. The future will one day speak of a seemingly small group of people who saw the world for the violent place that it was and said that they would no longer only talk about ending suffering and oppression, they would instead demand it.
We represent a worldwide movement, and we will not relent until total animal liberation is achieved!
And in that moment, when those demands were met, humanity looked at the things they'd done to non-human animals with disgust, disdain, and with guilt. And they said, non-human persons, the lives of non-human persons should be treated the same value and respect that we assign to our own lives.
We all know what this is. This is the corpse of a living creature, someone's baby, a sentient being like us, with thoughts and feelings and a destiny, and it's taken from millions of animals every year in the name of that we can't possibly live without eating meat. It's not possible. I can't do it. I can't become a vegan. I can't take responsibility for this industry. I can't take responsibility for this planet. And what it represents to the people who did this is just money in some corporation's profit, in their pocket.
It's not hopeless, like people are saying. We have a chance to reverse climate change. We have a chance to reverse biodiversity loss. We have a chance to stop all the wildfires. We have a chance to stop the ice from melting. People are in alignment with this mission. They will listen to us if we say, if we just reduce consuming animals, you can actually bring back the forest. What we are talking about here is a cultural change.
I mean, look at me. I'm traveling 300 days a year around the world. I'm lecturing sometimes twice a day, and I'm 85. I haven't eaten meat since the beginning of the 70s or maybe the end of 69. You feel lighter, you feel stronger, you have more health, and I totally recommend it.
All of us know what the moral position is. The moral position is to resist this and to end it. Organize, resist, persist.
so glad you liked it. Thank you. Well, come on up, Dr. Rao. Yeah. Wow, I'm so glad you guys liked it. And once again, a shout out to Jeff Adams, who did such a great job editing it. Way to go, Jeff Adams. I know you guys probably have questions. I want to start by asking, how can people here get involved with your organization, Climate Healers, Vegan World 2026?
So we have a conference coming up in October, which is going to just continue beyond what we started last year. And you can find information at veganworld2026.org. And you can sign up there and join our mailing list, and we'll keep you posted. There is so much work that needs to be done, and we need all of you. All of you need to be involved in this.
And I'd like to say, for those who can't go to Arizona, is there a way to, and I'm also talking to about organizations here. Like the key animal rights organizations are here. They're in this building. And so how can you work with animal rights organizations so that they can do some of the work? And, oh, Mia, I wasn't sure you were here. Thank you. Come on up. I apologize. The lights went on. But how can they do that? How can they work with you? Because this is an opportunity. Like, here's a convergence of the people who are going to participate and make this change. So, I mean, I really hope that all the organizations here actually talk to Dr. Rao while he's here and make plans, because not everybody can go to Arizona.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live of the conference as well, so you can participate from wherever you are. So you don't have to be there. But then there'll be lots of parallel sessions happening in the conference. You will get to only see one of those. Right.
Yeah. You also do seminars, webinars.
Right. So I have put a lot of webinars up on our website. If you go to climatehealers.org/webinar, you'll see a webinar about every aspect of this. There's one on the political, one on social, one on cultural, and so on. So you'll see different aspects of it broken down, and you see the kind of work we did last year and over the last year.
And one last question before we get to Mia. If people here, give an example of how they can get involved, because I know for me, I have to visualize something before I do it. And so just person X comes up and says, hey, I want to do something, I can't go to Arizona. How can they get involved where they pick a policy issue that they're interested in? For example, if you're interested in transitioning farms, factory farms, to plant-based farms like mushrooms or hemp or whatever, how can they create that task force or get involved with that task force? Because really the devil's in the details here. It is about yay, but it's also about doing that work, which I know everybody here is capable of and would like to do.
Yeah. So it's all about the how question, right? So we have listed a lot of questions about the transition. What do we need to do from now until 2026 to get there? And then how does it look like when we get there? So that's the two sets of questions that we have. And you can pick any particular question and say, I want to work on that. Then I'll connect you with the task force that's working on it right now. And then you can start doing a Zoom meeting with them, getting involved in looking at more details into those questions. So this is exactly how the internet was built as well, This is an engineering project, by the way. A civilization is an engineering project, okay? The current civilization that we have is an engineering project that nobody really designed. It just happened to be like this. And it's built on lies. And you know that any engineering project built on lies is going to crash. That's exactly what it's doing. So you need to build a new engineering project in which we clearly design it with the truth. That's how you build something that works.
So, Mia, I wanted to ask you, because you are so involved in this and there's so much dovetail. Do you see a way where you could work with Dr. Rao? Because so many things you mentioned in your talk are the very things. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the film, both of you. I think it was really, really nicely done, very powerful. So thank you for that. Well, I was thinking as I was watching it, because I hadn't seen the film before I heard about it. Sorry, okay, I hadn't seen it or heard about it before. One, I think it would be really interesting to have it at climate conferences. I know you've been at one of them, at least, right? I saw a picture of you on a panel. So I think we should talk about that. I think it could be a shorter version. I mean, I know when you make a film, it's a big project and a lot of work, so you might not want to hear. A shorter version could be good for climate conferences, but I think to have climate policymakers see it, well, don't worry about it right now. This is a very nice piece of work. But I'm also thinking is, there is a global movement, right? And this is a global set of issues. So I'm wondering if there are some ways with some of the networks we work with to join some of what you're doing. So these discussions are also in India, are in Paraguay, are in China, are in many places, and how do we seed that as part of a global movement, which is, being built in certain ways, but there are different pieces of it. So that's what I thought when I saw it. I mean, you had Greta Thunberg, you had a lot in that, and a lot of really good data, and really well presented. So I also have to thank you, Jane, for how you put all of that together, and obviously your research and your thinking. But yeah, really nicely done.
I had a thought is, it does feel overwhelming, and I like to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's going to get involved, and I think, oh my God, I don't have any expertise, and blah, blah, blah. What I was wondering is, what if you made some of those task force some of the organizations? Because let's say PETA, Mercy for Animals, Last Chance for Animals, Animal Equality, Vegan Outreach, they all have organizational structures already. So if you were to pair with them, they could take one, or your organization could be involved in taking one. And so sometimes I think just waiting for the individuals, while there are individuals who are obviously stepping up, maybe you can tell us how many individuals are stepping up, and can you work with organizations like Brighter Green?
Oh, absolutely. This is a global. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a global project. I mean, we really have to. It's like we are changing the game of civilization. We are now playing a game. Okay, when we wake up every morning, our game today is how do you get money? That's our main game. So we have to have a different game. Okay, it's a different story, a different game, a different living arrangement. It's really a different way of living that we are envisioning for the future, in which we are in harmony with nature. Okay, we have to get in harmony with nature, otherwise we have no choice. So that's why, I think I like the idea of one organization taking a particular question and saying, we'll address it. Mm-hmm. We'll come up with the best recommendation for that. This is really all it is, it's coming up with recommendations, and then making sure that all those recommendations do work well together. That's an engineering project. That's really all we are doing.
And I don't think it necessarily just has to be the kind of groups like, as much as I admire them and love them, the PETAs and the Mercy for Animals, it could be a sanctuary. There are people here, can anybody raise their hand if you're leading an organization, or you're part of an organization where you have a leadership position? Okay, so there are people here. Your organizations, even if they're not necessarily totally tied to that, could take on one issue, an issue that might be dear to your heart. For example, obviously we're going to have to deal with media. Jane Unchained is a media organization. One of the reasons that we started it is the mainstream media doesn't cover this stuff. I mean, you've got people like Rachel Maddow who is talking about the Paris Climate Accords and fomenting about how the administration doesn't acknowledge climate change, but at the same time talks about, how big her turkey was and she couldn't fit in the oven, so they put it on the grill. Actually, Jane Unchained did a video calling her out on that. I admire her, I watch her, but if you're smart enough to figure out the nuances of the Russia investigation, which are super, super complicated, you should be smart enough to realize that animal agriculture is a leading cause of climate change, and if you're calling people out on climate change, you shouldn't participate. So one of the things that we do is try to, hold mainstream media accountable. All right, we've got questions from the audience. We've got the mic right there. So who would like to ask a question? Desperado. Okay, just jump up and ask a question. Okay, there we go. You gotta put it on. Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, is it working? Okay.
Yeah, just speak up.
Oh yeah, so hi. Thank you so much. It was a really great film. I had more of a factual question. So I've seen the UN report from over a decade ago, I think, that said greenhouse gases were I think it was 14% or so was from, and then I also saw the World Bank was 51%, and that's a huge gap. And I know there were also a lot of issues surrounding the UN report. So when I talk to people, like, this is a big thing that comes up, like, what should I be telling them? What is the role of animal agriculture and greenhouse gas emissions exactly? Thanks.
Right, I addressed that in a webinar. It's called the Cowspiracy Climate Change Truth webinar. So the 51% is accurate. Not only is it accurate, it's probably an underestimate. Okay, because they were counting the amount of carbon that will get sequestered if everybody goes vegan, and they undercounted that. It actually is much bigger than what they're saying. So it's a huge issue. If people go vegan today, we can start reversing climate change. So please take a look at that. If you go to climatehealers.org/webinar, it's the first webinar that you'll see. It's Cowspiracy Climate Change Truth webinar.
Very quickly, how many people? Let me.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think you should watch Dr. Rao's webinar. There are issues around that 51% report, and I know some people who work on it. I mean, we tend to use the UN report, which is 14.5%, but that number was also created several years ago now, more than several, like 2013. So it's very likely an undercounting in the number of animals. So it is quite likely it's higher. I wouldn't actually say 51%.
I respectfully disagree. 51% is not only is it a valid number, it undercounts. And I've explained exactly how it is. And I go through the peer review that happened on the 51% report. It is inaccurate to say it was not peer reviewed. It was peer reviewed. The FAO scientists actually wrote a paper about it in the Animal Feed Science and Technology Journal. And the Goodland and Hanang and rebutted everything that the FAO scientists had said. Okay, after Goodland and Hanang had rebutted all that, the FAO scientists, FAO then had an agreement with the International Meat Secretariat and then came up with the 14.5%. The 14.5% is so inaccurate, scientifically invalid. It is scientific illiteracy to even quote that. It's that bad.
But it is the FAO. I mean, that is with different audiences. Again, and I don't want to belabor it, but unfortunately, if you quote the 51% to climate scientists, climate policymakers, they delegitimize that. Right. So I think it's higher. I think, again, animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. That's a good thing to say, and that's true.
Okay. And by the way, I remember, Albert Einstein said that anything can be explained simply, and if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand deeply enough. So one of the things that I would like to see is all of this broken down so that Joe Schmo can look on the website and doesn't have to know even what an FAO is, and just basically break it down so that people who want to say, animal agriculture is a leading cause of climate change, and when they say, that's nonsense, you can go, oh yeah, it's true, boom, 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 boom. That's what we need. Thank you, go ahead.
Oh, hello. Oh, now it's loud. Okay. I was prepared to yell at this. My name is Lana, and I work with 0 Hour and other youth-led climate action organizations. I was wondering how you envision the animal rights movement working with the youth environmental movement that you talked about in your film.
Yeah, we are talking to Youth Climate 0 Hour. I have a meeting with you in a couple of weeks. Okay, so we are talking about collaborating because there is a lot of misinformation on this, okay? Unfortunately, climate scientists are all eating meat. Yeah. In 2015, I went to the largest gathering of climate scientists in the world, and the banquet dinner, the main course was steak. So how do you expect them to tell you the truth about it? It's not that they are bad people, it's just that they have to put blinders on, otherwise they cannot justify what they're doing.
I just want to say, I urge every single one of you, wherever you live, to get involved with the climate strike movement. Here in Los Angeles, we have a liaison to the youth climate strike movement. And at first, they literally had said, basically, cool it on the veganism message. And basically, I got up and gave a very angry speech at that point, and then I boosted that post and I said, the reason this woman went off at a climate strike march, because trying to get the word out, but we also played good cop. We didn't just scold. We brought vegan food. We offered vegan speakers. We explained the connection in a way that they could understand. In other words, they're not scientists and neither am I, in a very simple way, because these facts are kept from people. And now they've embraced it, and a lot of them are going vegan. And we've got a program where we're taking them to vegan restaurants so that they see how great it is. And so I urge all of you to do the same thing. But bring a sign. Just going to a climate strike march as a vegan doesn't help. You need a sign that says, go vegan. Animal agriculture causes climate change, because sometimes vegans show up at these climate marches, and how can you tell they're vegan? Except that they look better and they're sexier. Okay? All right, another question.
Hi, I just want to say thank you so much for that film. I think I speak for everyone when I say it was absolutely incredible. So if we can just get one more round of applause real quick for that. And I have a question. So as part of our activism, how can we spread this film to a wider audience? Where can we access this film online?
We're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I'm not an expert in that. I was in the news business for many years. So we're trying to figure out, can we get it on Amazon Prime? And basically what I found out is you need a couple of famous people to put their names on it as an executive producer. So we're trying to find, if anybody knows any famous vegans. Kim Kardashian just went vegan. That would be good. But yeah, we're trying to find some prominent people who might be able to say they're executive producers. Then some of those platforms take things more seriously. So we're in that process. But one way or another, we're going to get it out there. If not on Amazon Prime, or if we put it on YouTube, we'll promote it heavily and get eyeballs that way.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here and your presentations. I watch way too many videos, lectures about climate change. I'm determined to make myself completely depressed. But something I've heard about that is really frightening to me is the global dimming effect or solar masking. Can you speak to that? And how would thank you, how would the lessening animal agriculture, what kind of impact is that going to have? Thank you.
So that's a very important point. In fact, global dimming this is why.
What is it?
This is why if you just change all our energy infrastructure to solar, like Al Gore wants, you would actually destroy the planet even faster. This is stupid. It's a stupid thing to do. You have to first go vegan, okay? Before you change to solar panels, you have to first go vegan. Because when you go vegan, you're going to reverse what is happening to the CO2. So CO2 is going to get drawn down. And then when you go solar, the global dimming is not going to be such a big effect. Because what is global dimming? Let me explain to you what that is.
Geoengineeringwatch.org goes over it. They're dropping nanoparticles on us. Can we just listen? Because you don't have a microphone, but we'll get to you. Okay.
So global dimming, right now as human beings, we are doing a lot of things. We are pouring a whole bunch of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We are pouring a whole bunch of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, methane into the atmosphere. All kinds of greenhouse gases are going up into the atmosphere. But sulfur dioxide, and there are gases like that which are really aerosols. So they do the opposite of greenhouse gases. They cool the earth as opposed to heat the earth. So if you look at the total amount of heating that we are doing, it's about 3.2 watts per square meter. And if you look at the total amount of cooling we are doing, it's 1.6 watts per square meter. So the net heating is 1.6 watts per square meter. Okay? It's roughly all equal. Now, where does the aerosol come from? The aerosols, most of them come from when we burn coal. So when you burn coal, you're putting CO2 into the atmosphere, and you're also putting SO2, sulfur dioxide, into the atmosphere. So you're putting aerosols into the atmosphere. So coal is really a net zero. Okay? But the sulfur dioxide only stays up for 2 weeks, whereas the CO2 stays up there forever. So this is a problem. So if you suddenly stop burning coal, you are no longer putting sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. You're going to be heating up the earth by 3.2 watts per square meter, not 1.6. So you're going to double your heating. Now this is what Al Gore is trying to persuade all of us to do. Does he not know this? They all know this. Jim Hansen knows, they've written papers about this. This is all known. So what exactly is their agenda? I don't know. Okay? But if you go vegan, then you are going to get rid of the methane within 12 years. And when you bring back the forest, you're going to draw down the carbon in the atmosphere. On land, we have 3 times as much carbon as we have in the atmosphere. So we have added 30% more carbon in the atmosphere now, okay? So what do we need to do? We have to increase the carbon on land by 10%. That will reverse exactly everything that we have done in the atmosphere. Can we not increase the carbon on land by 10%? Yes, we can. Look at how much we have deforested. It's crazy. So we did a calculation where we said, okay, look at all the grassland that we currently use for animal agriculture and just return it back to the forest that used to be there. And that was enough to reverse everything that we have done. So the first thing we need to do is to go vegan as a world. And then we can change our energy infrastructure. That's the right order in which to do things.
Oh. And I thought aerosol came from hairspray, so what do I know? Very quickly, because we have another question. How many people do you have involved so far in Vegan World 2026? And people have signed on. I know we had a couple of hundred at that conference, but I know you're traveling around the world.
So I have about 500 people now on the mailing list who are interested in working on this. So I would like to include all of you now.
And how many do you think you need to get to your level where you've created this system blueprint for what we have to do? And then once the blueprint's created, where do we go from there?
So this year, we're going to be working on the new game. What is this new game that we should be all playing as opposed to the game we are playing today? Okay? So that's the new currency system, literally. So we call it the Aquarius currency system. And that's the main thing we're going to be working on this year at the conference.
So is that like a cryptocurrency?
It's a cryptocurrency. It's basically like, look, we are currently using currency systems that were built like 10,000 years ago, right? The printing press was, 1500? So we still have pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them, okay? That's how we are deciding what we are going to do. So this is 15th century technology we are using, and we are still using 18th century processes, like electing people, sending them over to Washington, D.C. to make decisions for us. This is really old stuff. So this, to me, is like the analog way that we were doing the internet before I came along, Yeah. So all I did in the internet was to say, instead of doing this analog connections, if you did a digital connection, you can actually make it 10 times faster and more robust. And that's how the internet, became so robust and became popular. So the same thing we are doing now for our game. The new game that we are playing does not have to be using 15th century technology and 18th century processes. We are in the 21st century. Let's wake up. We can do things much, much better, very differently.
And let me ask you a question. Do you see tech titans who are very into, obviously, you've got some titans who want to send people to another planet, and they're spending billions of dollars in that. Do you see a way to connect, the dots here so that these smart people, a lot of whom are investing in meat alternatives, might want to invest in this big picture? Because you guys are big picture thinkers.
I think that's a great point. And yes, I think there is a growing critique, especially with the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, kind of like, that might have been amazing and a good use of money and a wonderful project that brought a lot of people together. But given the state of the planet now, is that really how we should be spending money? Jeff Bezos and others sending people to Mars and all of that. So I think there is a critique around that. The planet is dying before our eyes. Let us use those resources here. I think, tech cuts both ways, right? I mean, it's complex, and some things are very good and some things are not so good, including the amassing of power. But yes, I think so, Jane. I think because of the Beyond Meat and Impossible and others, I think the food and tech is definitely coming together in ways that are largely good. I think there is growing pressure, including because of some of the young climate activists, on very wealthy and powerful people and institutions to say, look, we need to be addressing the crisis that's also laid out in the film. I think even issues around deforestation, and we just discussed the science behind that, but there's a lot of energy behind reforesting, protecting forests. But at the same time, deforestation continues. But I think, again, the role of animal agriculture in forest loss is not as well known as it really should be. And that's another place where people who care about animals, people who care about climate and environment can really work together, because there's huge potential in that. I mean, we all need forests, but the other species need forests. The planet needs forests to suck carbon, to capture carbon. So I think there are a lot of those intersections. So yeah, I think there's going to be growing pressure from above and below, but I think some of it is younger generations saying to their parents, saying to a leader, saying to a wealthy person, what are you doing? How do we solve this crisis? So yeah, I think there is that, and there will be more of that.
I do feel, thank you so much, Mia. I do feel that you should try to get in and see Google and NVIDIA and Facebook. I mean, see the big ones, and Microsoft. I mean, talk to these executives or go to the Gates Foundation. I mean, these people could literally, if you got them on board, they could accelerate the work 1,000-fold.
Yeah, but they are the successful ones in the old game. This is why you have to be careful, because they are trying to build Libra, which is like a cryptocurrency that's going to make the old game much more efficient at destroying the planet. So we are doing something called Aquarius, which is a different cryptocurrency that is creating a new game. It's not based on the old. It's a new game altogether. Right.
Ethics at the center. Okay, we have a couple, we're happy to stay here till 4 in the morning, so you guys, whatever you want. Question here?
I first of all wanted to say thank you for the amazing film, because it was wonderful. But I had 2 different questions. One of them is mostly for Jane. I do a lot of social media activism, but I was wondering if you had any tips for within the animal rights spectrum or climate activism on reaching a larger audience than just vegans, because I feel like when your following is entirely, vegans, you're only reaching those people and you're not reaching non-vegans, and there's almost no point in sharing the sad footage if people watch it.
Very good question. And the reason I started Jane Unchained, I was in mainstream media for 38 years. And I did by hook or by crook get animal rights stories on, and didn't make me that popular, I'll be honest with you, with some of the management and places that I worked at. But, to give them credit, I was allowed to do that because I would sort of establish a precedent. And the reason I started Jane Unchained is that the mainstream media is not covering this issue. They're not covering it the way they should, and a lot of times they're not covering it at all. So look at the CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations there that we showed, that you've never seen that. How many of you have seen that on a regular TV show? Never, right? So we're dealing with an oppressive system. So really, social media is the best way to get the information out. And we can reach a lot of people. Last year, Jane Unchained had 17.6 million video views and almost 10 million minutes of videos viewed. And those weren't all viewed by vegans, because we target bacon lovers, smoked meat, and all sorts of other people who are not vegan, and we also target people who are influencers like MSNBC, New York Times, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair. We try to get to the people who are the ones who shift the culture. So, we don't, sure, I'll target vegans if there's a new vegan restaurant and I want it to get some good customers, and I'll target Los Angeles, for example, if it's in LA, and I'll put vegan, vegetarian, vegan recipes. But a lot of times I'll target non-vegans. So we do our best. To me, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Everybody's always begging and pleading to get mainstream media. A lot of times, even when they show, we're so overjoyed, they show 15 seconds, they mischaracterize it. It's almost like, why did we struggle so hard to get that 15 seconds? So I think local news, for example, is backwater. That's what it is. It's a backwater. And I was in local news for many years, and I would fight with them. I didn't want to read the rodeo stories as kicker fun stories. So I know their mentality, and they're not going to make the change. So you should become a social media star. That's the best thing you can do to change kids your own age.
And then the second question I had was, there have been a lot of kids, I guess, at my school in general, in terms of climate activism, they say, they're always saying like, oh, I hate it when people tell me to go vegan because it's not me that's causing the problem, it's these big corporations. So I was wondering if you had any tips for like bridging the gap between, yes, it's the big corporations, but you're the consumer and you're like buying these products and you're funding them.
Yeah, this is what you tell them. I covered crime for years. I was a crime reporter. When you pick up the phone and you say, go kill so-and-so, you're just as guilty of the murder if you get caught as the person who shot or slit the throat. Homicide is the unjustifiable killing of another, not in self-defense, and it doesn't matter whether you pull the trigger or slit the victim's throat. So they're just as guilty of homicide as the poor person who's the low end of the totem pole, who has really very few choices about his or her job, and you saw the horror that they have to work with every day. They get depression, they get suicidal thoughts, they get alcoholism, drug addiction, carpal tunnel syndrome, domestic violence. I mean, their lives are hell. And the turnover rate is very high because it's a hellish job. So you could tell them they're not only exploiting the animals, they're exploiting the people, and they're cowards for hiring somebody else to do their killing for them and then walking around saying that they're nice people and animal lovers.
Thank you.
Great answer. That's going to be hard to top that. But I would just add that there is a nice quote from Greta Thunberg, the teenage climate activist, about, there are things that you can do. Don't fly, go vegan. And she talks about the importance of individual action as well as system change. So if you're around tomorrow, I can give you a link to where you can find that quote, because that might be persuasive with your classmates too.
Also, even Gandhi said, you cannot have social change without personal change. Both go hand in hand.
Great. That's a great quote. I didn't know that. Hi, everybody, and thank you all for being here. To build on the last two things, it was so ironic that those things came up. How many people have been to a protest at an embassy or a politician's office? Do them at media sites. That's what the theme of my group is. Go to the TV station, have it in front of the TV station. Go to the Washington Post, have it in front of the Washington Post. So we kind of want to start maybe using them back and say, we're at your doorstep. Because the embassy, frankly, they don't care that you're there. You may get a few you may get a few cars driving by honking a horn. You may get that politician to give you 5 minutes, or more likely an aide or something. If you're delivering petitions to people that don't care to begin, then that's what we need. I think that's one of the things we need to work on. And it's not enough to vote. Go out and volunteer and know their positions. So we have Mark Warner, Senator Lesniak up in New Jersey, Adam Schiff, who is currently all the rage, is the person who put forth the bill that eventually ended SeaWorld having, hopefully, orcas. So that's just to build on everything you've said. So start thinking outside of the box where you're going to show up.
I agree 100%. There was a climate strike protest outside the New York Times, and I guess they climbed on something, and I think it was like 70-some people were arrested. And the New York Times had to issue a statement, and they said, we're sorry you don't like our climate change coverage, but we did, 200 and something stories. They cited a figure. Problem was, it was the wrong stories. And in the same, not all of them, but it didn't stress animal agriculture enough. And in the same newspaper, they have a food department that just today I was looking, and they're doing a story about pork. So they've said that processed meat is cancer causing. They've said that, you saw it, we just took it right off the New York Times, one of the best things you can do to stop climate change is to eat less meat. And yet they are still promoting meat because they have like this balkanized system, and they have a food department, and that food department doesn't want to be told what to cover. And so, there's a lot of in-house politics. And also they want to sell papers, so subscriptions. So, we've also called out the New York Times. There was a New York Times climate change conference at Paramount Studios, where I used to work for 12 years. and I was looking online, reading the paper, but I get it online. And I said, oh, climate change conference, Paramount Studios, let's go. So Lisa Carlin, who was just here, and I, and a couple of other people went. Of course, they talked for an hour and a half, never mentioned animal agriculture. When questions came, we were all scattered around. We asked, why aren't you talking about climate change? Why are you suppressing this information? Blah, blah, blah. They were not happy. And then we went live, just like we are now, outside, because they were serving chicken and pork. And basically, we were told to leave. And the good news was Mark Ruffalo was in the audience. He didn't seem to know initially anything about it, but he was open. He was the only one saying, yeah, I want to learn. Thank you for asking. And I think he's made a lot of changes. I can't say for sure that he's vegan, but I know he's grown from that. He was actually one of the panelists. So, you never know. You hit one influential person, you can make a big difference. But yeah, I think the New York Times is just part of the system. I mean, it's the system.
Right. Yeah, it's a system. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question here.
Hi, I'm Sai. Good evening. And so since I assume that you have already gone through many of these kind of challenges, so what is the best way, according to you, if you want to convince people around you, at least to make them consider to give a shot or consider going vegan for at least for a limited time? I know everyone is pretty much educated and are they're rational about daily things they do and all, but when it comes to one of the biggest problems which is happening right now, everyone say So what's the best suggestion that you would give to any one of us here, so to make people around to give a shot on this?
Yeah, I mean, you need to tell them that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. Leading cause. It's not a peripheral issue. It is the main issue. Okay? And this is scientifically valid data. Basically, what we are saying is, if you have the current system, you're going to emit so much greenhouse gases from animal agriculture. If you eliminate animal agriculture and have a plant-based agriculture, you're going to sequester carbon. So there's a huge negative emissions that you cause. And the difference between the two is much bigger than what the fossil fuel industry is causing. Okay? So this is the major thing we need to tell them.
Yeah, I think for some people, facts are important. For some people, experiences are important. For some people, their social context is important. So I think probably for the people we all know, you kind of have to see what would work. I mean, I like facts. I kind of grew up in a fact-based universe where it was like, if you see something is causing pollution, you see something is exploiting animals, you see something is causing climate change, okay, you might not be able to change everything about your life in that minute, but you can't ignore a fact, right? Inconvenient. I mean, we have that term now, right? Inconvenient truth. But I think for other people, it could be an experience, going to a vegan restaurant, you cooking, you showing videos of, athletes, Dr. Rao's video, Jane's video. I mean, there are many different things. So I think you probably have to know your audience a bit. But I agree that I think the science is really important, and sort of what's at stake here, right? As we destroy forests, destroy other animals, exploit billions of animals to eat them, what is all of that adding up to? And it's a huge calamity, including for human health.
And I just want to say, one of the reasons I got involved with Dr. Rao is that I had this realization. We're wasting a lot of time trying to convince those close to us, because the closer you are to somebody, the less likely you are to be able to convince them to go vegan, because they take it personally and they become defensive, and it's like a personal insult. They develop a resentment. Forget the people you know. Go take all that energy and put it into doing a task force with Dr. Rao. Making a video, doing Instagram, being part of it. Don't waste your energy with it's very hard to change the people you're close to. Look, I'm a recovering alcoholic with 24 years of sobriety. Until I personally hit bottom, you could have talked to me till you were blue in the face. I wasn't hearing anything. I was hearing because I wanted to drink. My addiction was in full bloom, and it's the same exact, the analogy is perfect. Until they wake up. on a personal level. But when the culture shifts and getting drunk, or let's use a better example, cigarettes, when cigarettes sort of became uncool in America anyway, that caused the shift. So you're better off trying to change the culture than trying to change your good friends and your relatives.
Thank you.
Oh, do you have a question?
Yes. I just want to ask more from a transition. My name is Shankar. More from a transition. I understand this as a solution, and it has a different phase or a solution at a different matrix, you can say. I want to address more from a transition. Like, for example, you can take agriculture. The forest is wiped out, and it's dominated with monocropping or something like monoagriculture. If you take more of animal agriculture, how we can displace all those, like how we can give those transitions, and if you can give a couple of examples on the major transitions that need to be dealt with. Like, for example, there are lots of pigs. What are you going to do? Can we leave them in a sanctuary? Can we put them back into the forest? Or how are we going to do this? For example, today if everybody goes vegan, that needs to be addressed for next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or something that needs to be addressed. And I don't know a better way to say that. You can reframe the question and address how the transition can be handled. Yeah.
Right, so that's the kind of work that Renee has been doing with the Rancher Advocacy Program, where she helps people transition from their ranching to mushroom farming, turning it into a sanctuary. But simultaneously, when people go vegan, then less and less animals need to be produced. So there should be less of this production that happens, right? But currently we have a system that is so messed up, that we are actually producing more, even though people are eating less. And the government is buying more and more and storing it in warehouses. So this is what happens when you tell corporations your job is to keep growing. So that's what they're doing. And they just use the government because they have money, and they're basically influencing the government to buy up their surpluses. So it's a system that's completely broken. Okay? And so we're doing something so stupid. We are burning down the Amazon at a faster rate than ever before, and simultaneously we are storing more processed meat in warehouses.
And cheese.
And cheese too, yeah.
Okay, I think we probably should take 2 more questions because Claire Mann, I would love to get her question. So your question and Claire's, and then we'll wrap it.
Hi, thank you, Jennifer Green. Just when I thought that I guess I was seeing signs that awareness was growing about what the problem that is posed by animal agriculture and the solution, I also started to see this competing narrative championed by Alan Savory and others who are favoring this regenerative agriculture. And so what I'm wondering is, what's your assessment of the threat of this? Is it just in little pockets and corners, or should we be worried that people in other huge countries are going to be buying into this? So I wonder if you can talk about that.
Right. I addressed that in the Conspiracy Climate Change Truth webinar. So there were 3 segments. One was on the Goodland and Anand 51%. I addressed that in great detail. And then I addressed Alan Savory in great detail. And then I addressed what's happening in India in great detail. So please take a look at that, because I have a lot of references in that webinar. What has happened? Well, Alan Savory is trying to create this alternate narrative that would revive the industry again. That's what he's trying to do, okay? And unfortunately, Extinction Rebellion is using that. So this is why I've challenged them to a debate. And so we're going to have a debate on October 26th. If they don't show up, we're going to just have a webinar about it. It's with an empty chair, okay? Because the leading cause of mass extinction is animal agriculture. And they're pretending it is fossil fuels. It's the same kind of pretending that Al Gore was doing, okay? So they're trying to frame it also always as a fossil fuel issue, so that you cannot do anything about it yourself. You depend on governments to do something about it. So you're giving away your power. All along, it was your own consumption that caused it, right? So this is why I think we need to squash this in the bud, and this is why I have taken them on, because I noticed that in all their public events, in their photographs, you see fossil fuels, you don't see anything about animal agriculture. Extinction Rebellion. And the founder of Extinction Rebellion gave a talk promoting Alan Savory.
Uh-oh.
So that was it. So I just, told them that's unacceptable.
Yeah, we got to take care of that.
Just a quick point. Jennifer, we could talk a bit more about Alan Savory. There's a good article in the Sierra magazine about Alan Savory, and there's just a lot of things that are not very clear about it. So how big a problem is it? I mean, it's a problem because, there's a lot of investment in continuing animal agriculture, shifting it to something that seems more sustainable. And on a large scale, that's not sustainable, right? And ethically, of course, many of us would question that. So I think it's a problem, but I don't think it's a global, it's not like Alan Savory is everywhere in the world and everyone wants to do that. And people, if you're interested, we could talk a bit more. It's basically a grazing methodology and regenerating land through quite a lot of grazing and a lot of animals.
Is this the guy who killed 40,000 elephants?
Yes.
We killed 40,000? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know, but I saw, maybe the person I saw, somebody sent me a video, and it's this guy who does a TEDx talk, and he says, I thought that elephants were killing the environment, so I had 40,000 of them killed. And, I was wrong. Oh, my God.
I think he must have been.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, and you're listening to that person? Are you kidding me? Who says now he's devoting his life to whatever. If that's the same person, I was so horrified when I saw that video. If that's Alan Savory, I'm going to change his name to Alan Unsavory. Okay, we have one more question here from Claire Mann.
Thank you.
Who is a brilliant author and has a new book coming out.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the fabulous documentary. I'm very interested in the how, and forgive me, I haven't yet looked at your website, and I can't wait to go there. But what I was hearing from you, Jane, is very much us going there and finding tasks and to work to our sweet spot and organizing our own groups. So forgive me if this is something we're already doing or this can add enrichment to it. I've recently been reading the book Rules for Revolutionaries, which was the communication team that were behind the Bernie Sanders campaign. Now, I wasn't in America at the time, I live in Australia. But those communication advisors came to Australia through Skype at a big conference of our equivalent of avaz.org, which is Get Up. And one principle they talked about is the think global, act local, of course, is at any time, whilst there may be multiple projects going on, is to have this overarching global campaign, but not disseminate it down with lots of detail, is give that problem to the little satellites of group, the sort of thing you're talking about. We took that principle when we wanted to change the laws in Australia for for people of the same sex to marry each other. And what happened, overwhelmingly, the metrics said that what pushed that over the line to get a successful outcome was people working in satellites and literally picking up the phone, and it was peer-to-peer. It wasn't down, and it wasn't really across. It was individuals making individual conversations, knocking on doors, having those conversations. So my question is that something we're already suggesting here, or is it something that will enrich the process? Thank you.
Great idea. It is something that is going to enrich the process, and we are doing that as well. So there is going to be a campaign in America it's called America's Front Porch, where people are going and setting up this front porch and having some chairs out there and having a conversation around what is really going on. And I'm doing something similar in India, so I'm going there in November to do the same thing. So, and this is something that we all need to get involved in. Just go around talking to people about animal agriculture and what it's really doing to the planet and how we can actually reverse all this by just changing what we eat. And how, it's not just eating, it's also what we wear. It's really the whole vegan thing, because you could stop eating and then still wear leather and still cause a lot of damage to the environment.
Thank you.
Ellen DeGeneres, you listen to that.
All right. I think that's a very interesting point, and I agree. I think the organizing and talking is important. I also think there's really a lot of work to be done in a policy space, but in more local municipal levels. There are cities now that are reducing purchases of meat. New York City has done that and said it is part of a climate strategy. Meatless Mondays, for many of us, we feel like might not go far enough, but there are entry points that I think it is about talking to a local legislator. I know where I live in Brooklyn, we see our city council person around. He comes to events. You can talk to him, then you can talk to other people. So I think that is, apparently that was the genius of the Sanders campaign, right? Sailesh would say to me, like, gotta hear what Bernie is saying about XYZ, and apparently the Hillary campaign didn't have as much of that. I just want to make one quick point on Extinction Rebellion, which I think is very interesting work, actually. I mean, it's more active in the UK, but we have it in the US too. But when I looked at their website, despite their saying it's about climate crisis and extinction crisis, I didn't see the word animal in any of their main documents. And again, I think that's another opportunity for those of us in the room who want to do that, to reach out to them and say, come on, you're talking about the biodiversity crisis, like, that's animals, and animals are affected by all of these things. Why isn't that, at least in they have a section called The Truth, why isn't that there? And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to really ask those kind of questions, try to hold these organizations accountable as well, and even to share the film with them.
Yeah, sure, I would love to do that. I know we said no more questions, but bonus question from Danny Rukin.
Thank you all, but to address the Extinction Rebellion aspect, they actually are starting to address it, and it's called, Animal Rebellion, and agree with, yes, it is becoming, so I think based in the UK, they are starting the conversation because enough of us climate vegans showing up at Extinction Rebellion events, as we've done in LA, in Portland, and other areas, in Donnie Moss and Adida, at other New York. So they are starting to address it. And at first, it felt very antagonistic to them. I mean, it's a process, it's a journey. Some of us are starting to show up at their meetings and bringing vegan food. And it's the whole front porch thing. But Animal Rebellion and, Toronto, big time. And Anita, of course, Climate Vegan, she started that a few years ago before, any of us really took to it. So it's really getting, which conference?
Give her the mic so she can
Well, oh yeah, well I'm going, so I'm not gonna give her the mic because I actually go to that. So the animal liberation, Toronto, I just didn't know which one you were talking about. Okay, so in Toronto, there's their first animal liberation conference, and that's August 14th to the 19th. I'll be there, and then of course there's gonna be the Animal Rights March on the 17th, because everywhere, all over, it's sometime in August, and depending on where. But I do want to reiterate that we are starting to do that. We already have a Slack channel in Portland, and we are starting with Animal Rebellion. And us showing up, there was at their Extinction Rebellion, they would not. We asked if we could get the mic to at least introduce it, and they weren't willing. But they're going to start coming around because we're showing up. Also, last thing, Extinction Rebellion, and I don't know the details, but Extinction Rebellion is doing massive stuff, I think, starting October 7th in the UK. And then I think there's also, massive Animal Rebellion is also with that. It's not just, it is the animals. So you want to say more about that?
During the climate summit, the 20th to the 27th in New York, there's going to also be a lot of massive. It's in New York.
What month?
October 7th is the Extinction.
No.
Climate conference.
The summit, it's the UN Climate Summit, is happening from the 20th to the 27th of September, and there's going to be
And there's also going to be the main climate summit at the end of the year in Chile.
I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my hearing.
So maybe we should end by saying, everybody go to that climate summit, okay? Everybody needs to get involved with the climate movement and come with their vegan signs, because we need to ride that wave, and we need to hold them accountable too. I mean, if not, it's just going to be more changing light bulbs and solar power, and it's not going to be real. And so everybody, it's really fun. The climate marches are great, and there's going to be one in your city, or go to New York City, but definitely when you see that a climate march is happening. And the last thing I'll say, join all the groups. Go on Facebook and join all these climate groups, and then share the stories
and see what they're doing and show up. We've got to get involved. So I think we've chased everybody out. By the way, for those who were going live, this room was packed, but we've talked so long, and that's really my MO. I will talk till there's nobody left to talk to, and then I'll talk in the mirror. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Woo! And please come and sign up.